mental statement to say, but we are 5 days out from running the width of the UK in a single day. 140 kilometers on the longest day of the year. East coast of the UK to the west coast of the UK. Starting at sunrise, Tynemouth Harbour. We've got to get all the way over to the west coast to a place called Bowness and Solway before sunset. Thankfully, it's the longest day of the year, which means I get to start at 4:20 a.m, which will be the earliest I've woken up this year for anything. Sunset is about 9:30 in the evening, so I've got about 17 hours to get across. The hard part about this is I get one chance to do this. Either I will make it to the finish line first, or the sunset will. And the good thing is I can see the sun the entire way I'm running. It means I've got to hold quite a punchy pace. It'll be the fastest ultra marathon I've ever ran. And it's also the first time I'm working with Red Bull on a project. So Red Bull are back in this one. There will actually be a live stream going the entire way. Another mental statement to be saying, but they will be live streaming the entire thing to this YouTube channel. We never know how much time we actually get to do anything that we want. All we can do is make the most of the time that we have. So for me, making the most of that on the longest day of the year, the day we get the most sunlight, the day we get the most time, doing something or pursuing something that I could very easily fail at. That is what it's about, racing the sun, making the most of every second we get that day. So 2026 has been a year I've ran the most in my life. Currently almost coming up to the halfway point. I'm closing in on about 2,400 kilometers. I've ran every single day of this year. I have not missed a single day. Even the day after the Go More Ultra Marathon, I managed to squeeze out 1 mile walk run. I mean, I had just run 190 kilometers, so it wasn't gonna be that fast or that far. But the most important thing is it's the most consistent my running has ever been. First part of the year, December, Jan, Feb, and March was all training for the Go One More Backyard Ultra Marathon in Austin, Texas. Mileage for that peaked around 140k for a week, and I came out of that feeling pretty good. I mean, as good as you can for running 192 kilometers in 30 hours, but I came out of it uninjured, which is the most important part. And I think a lot of that's down to the fact that I strength train a lot, I've got a history and background in strength training, and my mileage has always been managed quite carefully each week. So to make sure I was in a good position to attempt this, Red Bull wanted to test me. They invited me to the Athlete Performance Center in Salzburg, Austria. Now, this is the greatest sports performance laboratory in the entire world. This is where every single Red Bull athlete from around the world, from Max Verstappen to Hayden Wilde, get all their performance testing done several times a year. When I say they test for everything in this place, I mean they test for everything. I arrived in the morning, wasn't allowed to eat. I had a full blood test panel done. I got to meet with an orthopedic specialist who basically checked every single joint on my body for any potential wear or tear or any potential issues. This is really interesting to see because a lot of people say, running really far ruins your knees or your ankles. It doesn't. My ankles and knees are fine. It's actually a really nice boost in confidence because I think as a runner, you're always worried about the impact of running ultra marathons, running marathons on your joints. So for them to say not only are there no issues, but also my knees and ankles are looking fantastic is a sign that we're doing something right. The only thing that came back from the blood work was that I need a little bit more iron in my diet, and they have a pharmacy on site, so they just gave me some iron tablets and were like, have these twice a day. Apart from that, everything else was in line for where it should be. So considering I've just come off the back of a pretty big ultra marathon and a crazy training block, which is pretty reassuring going into this challenge, knowing that there's nothing wrong with me from like a blood department. For me, the best thing about coming to the Athlete Performance Center is meeting with a sports psychologist, and they're a specialist basically in performance psychology. This is an area that fascinates me. Like, what is it that some people have that gives them the ability to just keep pushing? When your body says no, you just have this ability to switch that off and keep on going. That is the thing that always fascinated me about ultra endurance distances. Your body will always want to quit and your mind's telling you to quit, and you have to ignore basically yourself. What I learned from this session was pretty interesting. Number one, your brain is not a truth-telling machine. Your brain is a keeping you alive machine. That is it. Your brain is just trying to keep you alive no matter what. So when you're pushing yourself during these ultras harder and harder, what your brain is telling you is to stop. And I've been in many situations like that where I've been running for days on end and my brain is just telling me to stop. You have to learn to basically ignore what your brain is telling you to do. And this is referred to as the self 1 and self 2. And just clarifying that you are not your thoughts. These thoughts may pop into your head telling you to quit, telling you to take some rest, telling you to slow down. How you choose to interpret them and recognize that you're not your thoughts, you're just a person experiencing those thoughts, and you can ignore them. Understanding that your mind is going to lie to you and your mind is going to try and keep you safe. And it's a very weird thing being able to switch that off, or ultimately listen to it, understand it, and then ignore it. When you're doing ultra marathons especially, the voice in your head telling you to quit or telling you to stop just gets louder and louder and louder the further you go. And in order to go pretty damn far, you have to learn how to switch that part of the brain off or completely ignore it. So after the performance evaluation, I was put through some pretty wild tests and some machines I've never seen in my life before. Next was a test with pretty standard physio tests, so jump test, calf power test. Again, two things I'm pretty good at coming from a strength and rugby background. But then we got on to what can only be described as a machine you'd expect to see in a BDSM dungeon, not in a sports performance lab, where I was tied down to this giant machine. I had to then crunch as hard as I could forward and then use my back to power myself back up again whilst being pinned down to this machine. And basically, This is to measure your total strength within your core, total strength in the lower back, and then to measure the ratio between core and back strength. The standard you should be at is your lower back should be 2 times stronger than your core, and your core overall strength number should be of a certain point for your weight. Thankfully, I hit all those tests, which is great to know. It was a pretty cool experience to learn exactly how strong my core is. I mean, all those years of doing ab curls have finally paid off. The final 2 tests were lactate threshold tests, where basically you're running on a treadmill, it incrementally gets faster, and you get stabbed in the ear, and a bit of your blood is taken and measured for percentage of lactate, basically to look at what zones you emit certain amounts of lactate at, to figure out your lactate threshold 1 and lactate threshold 2, which basically points to which your body is producing more lactate than it's able to pull out. Finally was a VO2 max test, which is like the gold standard for endurance testing. It basically measures the maximum amount of oxygen your body can utilize during intense exercise. Now, as I run ultramarathons pretty slowly, like I'm not pushing the pace at any time during these things, I actually don't spend a huge amount of my time training upper limit or VO2. It's an area that I've been trying to work on the last few years to get myself faster and get myself fitter. I can run really far. It just turns out I can't run really far and really fast. I kind of got the number I thought I was going to get. Nothing that impressive, but also nothing that terrible. The downside of doing these tests is you have to go until failure. That's why they put a harness on my back to make sure if I collapse, which I basically did at the end, I wouldn't get yeeted off the back of the treadmill. So great news is Red Bull gave me the all clear to then attempt this challenge, which we're now 5 days out from, which is, again, a mental thing to say. So to give a bit of context as to exactly how far I'm running or where I'm running, I've got a map. The Americans watching, this is what another country looks like. United Kingdom, my country. For those of you who live in the south of England, you'll only know the south. The north of England, up here, is where I'll be running. So on this side here, we have the wonderful city of Newcastle. Very fun place, good night out. Next to Newcastle, by the sea, is a place called Tynemouth. That is where I'll be starting. I'll then be running the width of the country from Sunrise here, all the way to a place here called Bowness-on-Solway. Between there and there is 140 kilometers. I have 17 hours to get there on foot. This is also the route of Hadrian's Wall. For those who don't know, it's a wall built by the Romans to keep the Scots out. It didn't really work because the Scots are everywhere now. I have one chance to do this on the longest day of the year on June 21st, which if you're watching this is probably tomorrow. Now, whenever I announce that I'm doing a challenge or running an ultramarathon, I get an overwhelming amount of support, well wishes, and people reaching out to ask me, how do you go about doing these sorts of things? I just want to make one thing clear. About 6 years ago, I would struggle to run a 5K without stopping. I've now run over 40 ultramarathons, so anyone who's out there thinking about getting into this kind of stuff, you do not have to start at this high level. You just have to start. I started by going out and trying to run to the end of my street and back without stopping. I then progress on to the next street, the next street, the next street, then a 5K, then a 10K, then a half marathon, then a marathon, then an ultra marathon. It takes time. The one thing you have to do is believe in yourself. If you don't think you can achieve great things in life, you will not achieve great things in life. Is what I reply to everyone who sends me these kind of messages is that you have to believe that you can achieve absolutely anything. This is advice I give to anyone, whether it's endurance training, whether it's business, whether it's whatever it is in their life. You have to believe you are capable of getting the thing. Away from running, away from fitness, it comes down to anything in life. In order to be successful in any realm, you need to have an iron mindset that you can achieve anything you want. If anyone asked me what my greatest talent is even back when I could barely run 5K, I could believe that I could one day run ultramarathons. I had that belief about myself even back then with zero evidence. All you have to do is understand you need to be willing to work an extraordinary amount of time and effort to get something. If you believe you can do that work, you should be able to achieve the thing. That is enough to build confidence within yourself. The harder you work, the luckier you get, the more confident you feel. And over time, you build that evidence for yourself, which comes back around in the form of belief about yourself. This is why I love running so much. Running requires an obnoxious amount of work to get decent at. Even now, I can run really far, but I wouldn't say I was a particularly great runner because I know how hard I work at it and I know how much harder I have to keep working at it. And the beautiful thing about this is that confidence you get from running, about fitness, about sports, carries with you in other areas of life, with career, with relationships, with friendships. Like, you become the confident person because you know how hard you've worked at something. So to anyone watching this who's thinking about doing something big or audacious or challenging, the first step in that process is believing you can do the work. Also, achieving things isn't cool. Being the person that can achieve them is cool. So become that person. Be the person who works damn hard at whatever it is they're chasing after. Whether that's fitness, whether that's career, whether that's anything in life, be willing to work damn hard at it. So when this video goes out, I'll be a day or two out from starting this run. Red Bull are supporting me on this challenge, and by support, they are live streaming the entire thing to this channel. So if you're watching this before October the 21st, set an alarm, because I'll be starting about 4:40 in the morning, or just tune in at some point during the day. You'll be seeing me do my absolute best to try and get myself from the East Coast of the UK to the West Coast in a single day. If you're watching this afterwards, well, I should have already finished. Hopefully I beat the sun. If I didn't, I guess I have to try again. But either way, I've worked damn hard at this, so I'm proud of that. And if you're watching this and you haven't yet subscribed, it's just down there. Just hit the button, subscribe. You know, it does me a favor. It'll do you a favor because you get to see more of my videos. But I appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.